The ACC has been a surprisingly strong league this year. If you look at the records of some of these teams, obviously Clemson and Miami stand out immediately, 7-0 and 6-1 respectively, but SMU is 6-1, Pitt is 6-0 right now and ranked, Duke is 6-1, Syracuse is 5-1. There's a lot of talent in the ACC this year, and I think that this is a conference that gets multiple teams into the CFP at the end of the year. I think both Clemson and Miami make it for them, and they're going to have some nice resume building wins. You look at this Pitt team, this SMU team, if you play either one of those teams, they're going to be a nice feather in your cap. Syracuse as well, Duke, any of those teams I think will be excellent wins for any ACC team that would happen to play them and beat them. But let's take a look at what happened the last week in the conference. Virginia Tech took down Boston College in convincing fashion, 42-21. Florida State lost to Duke for the first time in program history. Wow. To move to 1-6 on the year, big struggle town for the Seminoles. We already talked about the Louisville and Miami game. Clemson beat Virginia at home in the return of Tony Elliott to Death Valley. Feel good story there, but Clemson taking care of business for sure. Notre Dame beat Georgia Tech 31-13. SMU obliterated Stanford. Wake Forest squeaked out a win over UConn. Yeah. And then NC State beat Cal by 1 point, meaning Cal has now lost multiple games by the one possession, or a lot of games by one possession. There was the Florida State game, the Miami game, the NC State game. They've had a lot of barely missed opportunities. The Pitt game, all these games by barely any margin. Cal is so close to being 6-1 right now, but instead they are 3-4. But that's just how it goes. If you look at the standings in the conference right now, it is Clemson, Miami, SMU, Pitt, Duke, and Syracuse atop the conference, and those are all very solid teams in my opinion. They all have great players, and they've really all showed out this year. And two of these teams actually play each other this week on Thursday. So today, if you're watching this as it comes out tonight on Thursday, Pittsburgh will host Syracuse, and this is a fun QB battle. Eli Holstein and Kyle McCord are two of the upper tier quarterbacks in the ACC this year, in my opinion. Obviously, Cam Ward and Cade Klubnik are the top two, but moving after them, I think these guys are right in that next tier. Two very solid teams. I think Pitt needs to be worried about Syracuse for sure. I think there's a sneaky Syracuse team. They might pull off the upset here. Boston College hosts Louisville in a battle of two teams that looked very hot to start the year and then have fallen flat. I'm a little bit worried about Louisville in this one just because of the skill of Thomas Castellanos and this Boston College attack. I think that the Louisville defense struggled a bit this year. They might be vulnerable here. Georgia Tech versus Virginia Tech, the Battle of the Techs, is another good game this weekend, but one under-the-radar game that I'm very excited for is 3-4 North Carolina versus 4-3 Virginia. And Anthony Calandria and Omarion Hampton on the same field is going to be an electric factory. Hampton for UNC at running back, Calandria at quarterback for the Cavaliers. That's going to be a very fun game, I think. I would expect Virginia to win just because North Carolina has no semblance of a defense, and Virginia does. Wake Forest plays Stanford in the battle for the bottom of the conference, except Florida State wasn't invited. Then Cal takes on Oregon State in a classic Pac-12 matchup, even though this is the ACC section because of conference realignment. Then Florida State travels down to Coral Gables to take on Miami, and this should, you never know this season, but should be a murder. Miami, on paper, is just leagues better than this Florida State team, and I think they're going to want to get revenge from the beatdown that Florida State gave them a couple years ago at home, so look for Miami to be putting up big numbers in this one. Then my favorite game of the week in the ACC is number 22 SMU traveling to Duke in a battle of 6-1 teams. We'll touch on that a bit later in the picks segment, so stay tuned for that. As far as the college football playoff chance for the ACC, mentioned earlier, it's Clemson, it's Miami. If maybe an SMU or a Pitt wins out, they could get like the 11 seed, but I think it is just Clemson or Miami or both at this point for the ACC. So that's kind of your playoff outlook for them at this point.